Episode 8 of House of the Dragon was very good. Gotta point out that we've had almost nothing but straight bangers week after week from this show. I've loved literally all but one of the episodes, and I don't know if I can say that about many Game of Thrones seasons. Especially after season 4, it deserves huge respect. This is in no way a show just seeking to get away with prolonging the franchise for viewership, it's simply goated. So this episode had one scene in particular that stands above the rest. It's probably my favorite scene so far, and that's a tall order, as we were crossing that threshold last episode and in episode 5. But this one hit me the hardest, and it's because of Viscerys. His Grace the King has fallen from grace, though not entirely. Our beloved character has broken down, decayed, he's been sidelined, his body is eating itself away, and we linger in this unbearable agony of the king, which on its face is just very sad, and our introduction to this new reality coincides with Rhaenyra and Daemon's discovery of these truths. And it's through that shared experience between us and them that we are moved deeply. The king merits grief from us on his own, but when his withering is simultaneously brought before characters we care so much for, primarily Rhaenyra, whose relationship with her father we've seen develop ever favorably over the years, the two sources of sadness coalesce greatly. But this is just the starting point for this damn near entire character arc contained in this episode. By the end, Viserys has taken back the crown both physically and metaphorically. He's probably the best character now, but we'll need to explain much more to capture that. It's not solely to Viserys' credit that he thrives in this episode, because when we're down, we need a spark of life injected back into us by the people that are most important to us. And Rhaenyra serves that purpose. She speaks to a dying, drugged up man, and reminds him of the dream that they shared, the greater purpose behind their existence, more important than them, more important than the crown, and asks if he's still about it, if he'll defend his daughter. And so their history across these episodes is used to pry the fallen character back into action, and it's an inspiring success beyond expectations. Viserys rejects the drugs, endures the crippling pain, rises to the challenge. He's gonna make things right. He's gonna see that his will remains unhindered, which is something that's being opposed from different directions. The Hightowers want to supplant Rhaenyra, the Valyrians want to do their own thing, and everything stands to collapse on his daughter, so he steps in. He pulls himself together as best he can, and in the most dire of moments, when Rhaenyra is ready to make her last effort to keep the shadow over her family at bay, the king appears. He shoulders the burden that she feels she could not. It's no longer going to be the will of the Hightowers that stands as law in this matter, a matter they stand to benefit immensely from, but that of the king himself who they're meant to represent. And it violates them. They can't stand to see this hunchback, stumbling old man walk into the throne room. It's an immediate body slamming of Rhaenyra's opposition. They quiver in fear, and it evokes a dazzled stare from Rhaenyra. She's completely speechless, and it's these polar opposite intense responses from many of the main cast, this meteoric effect on the plot, on the fates of the characters who work and strive so hard for their respective goals, along with the surrounding context and totality that makes this such an amazing entrance for the king. The king gives swift closure to the issue. He doesn't simply aid his daughter, he takes Corlys's belief on the succession as the primary consideration, and they just so happen to benefit Rhaenyra. I'll talk about this scene a bit more through other characters in a minute, but it doesn't even end at this. Viserys isn't done, because the man is still not eating dinner, so he's gotta get the whole family together and chew it up. Now it's no secret that the House of the Dragon is divided, and it's no secret that the king is centrally focused on this issue, but here we see him go over and above in his pursuit of unity. He makes his feelings for all of them known, he reveals himself as he truly is to them, no mask. And that's interesting because he might be the only one not wearing a mask at this gathering. He's the one person who is wholly open and loving, and he's letting them know what they all share, what unites them, is the love the king bears for all of them, and they love him. And it's this message, this vulnerability, desperation from a fading king, that actually appears to inspire change. There's a real emerging hope from this dinner that Rhaenyra and Alicent might cease being adversaries. I mean, Alicent endorses Rhaenyra as queen, they both exchange some heartfelt words as well, and it made me wonder if the king had actually achieved his goal. Did he unite the House of the Dragon at last? And I don't know, I mean ultimately not, but at least for the moment there's a real chance that he had a tangible effect on his house. Now it could be all for show, but in House of the Dragons, the best we can do sometimes is read their eyes. And this did seem much more genuine than another instance of diplomatic courtesy, so even though our time with him is short, he's going out in a really good way. The fact he achieves all this while his body corrodes away and he endures terrible pain makes his determination so endearing. He's proving that he has a warrior spirit, and it's something that could potentially give him more of a legacy that he had regretted not cultivating earlier. I hope there's some lasting change to Alicent and Rhaenyra's relationship from this. But now I'm of the mind that the king won't be killed. He's gonna go out naturally. It would probably be a little too evil to go that direction while keeping both sides sympathetic now. He wraps up this episode with a message to Rhaenyra, and it's beautiful because he didn't just answer her question. He went all out to prove to her that he most certainly held to heart the importance of the prophecy he passed to her. The twist is that in his confusion, his words are going to be taken to mean something else that runs directly contrary to his message. Hopefully that doesn't change the outcome of this succession. It would be very upsetting to see. Alright, so with that out of the way, we can talk about our other main players in this episode. Rhaenyra and Alicent are next in line. Now Rhaenyra is once again in desperation mode. She doesn't fully give up here. She tries to utilize her children as a resource, like she attempted to with Alicent, in episode 6 I think it was, to get Rhaenys on her side, and it's a good effort, but as I had suggested, Rhaenyra's ploy to strike fear into her rivals is closing the door on any collaboration between her and the Valyrians, pushing potential allies away from her, and that comes back to bite her when Rhaenys tells her she's gonna watch as the Hightowers make her kneel down to them. So there's only one place left to go, to father. She tells her half-asleep father that he brought her into his dream to unite the realms against a common foe, but by choosing her, he divided the realm. This was cool to hear because in one of the earlier reviews, I made that point as well, so it's nice to see me and the show are on a similar page. But you know, the point of her character is supposed to be showing the people that they would be right to embrace her, that she isn't subject to those same traditions that kept Rhaenys off the throne. So I'd like it if Rhaenyra was a little more self-sufficient in facing these challenges, but you know what? I gave some criticism of her character in episode 2 about her having no notable flaws, and was worried that challenges wouldn't be real challenges for her. But this is very much the opposite. She doesn't have the fortitude to withstand the pressure from all sides. She has to lean on someone else. She isn't clever enough to manipulate people to her side. She's a human. She has her moments of strength and her moments of weakness, and at least she didn't run this time. She's using her most powerful resource and acting as the catalyst to the king's revival, so it's actually a positive. Now I do want Rhaenyra to have a greater breakthrough moment, where she takes hold of the situation and exercises her personal agency over powerful families in the realm. It doesn't have to be only her winning, but at some point I want Rhaenyra to go beast mode, and we're in a great position to unleash that, especially considering the episode 9 preview. Another part of Rhaenyra's weakness I appreciated was how she encapsulates her fractured resolve into this theme of the unbearable weight of the throne, something the king has experienced to the fullest. It took his fingers, his arm, and Rhaenyra being unable to cope adds weight to the king's fortitude. She pleads to her father to carry this burden for her, a burden of power, another theme explored last episode from another angle. And the king is her savior. She triggers his revival. We've talked about the magnificence of all that, but Rhaenyra gets a lot of credit for provoking him into action. I think Viscerys leading the way for Rhaenyra should be shown to us. His courageous actions should inspire Rhaenyra to become a better leader. Keep in mind this is a girl who couldn't even speak to her father confidently at the start of the show, and now she's the apple of his eye, gaining his favor at every turn, which continues at dinner. She takes the initiative to mend the cracks between her and Alicent, which was a very convincing performance. It seemed inspired and genuine. It adds a very human element to the story, where these people are rivals, they have their differences, but they aren't so alienated as to be monsters in the other's eyes. They can acknowledge their bonds and what they admire about each other. It's made better by us being unsure if they mean anything they're saying. This is a narrative versus meta-narrative issue that's spread across many episodes, where it's hard to sort the real from the pretend. It's an amazing feature of this show, definitely was present in Game of Thrones, but I think it's more hazy and unclear in this show. Another axis Rhaenyra is doing really well on is the children's side. Her children are in harmony, she's raising them well. They're studied, they're not getting in trouble, despite having the shadow of their parentage following them around everywhere. This is in stark contrast to Alicent's kids, and it makes them probably better suited for power than Alicent's children. Rhaenyra is also very focused on strengthening her bloodline, and by extension the future of her kids. Now this seems to be mostly selfishly motivated, but it's good that she's paving the way for future generations. It's a good leadership quality that she shares with her father. Now I think we took a little bit of opportunity from Rhaenyra this episode. She wasn't able to give her speech of advocacy for her son, and I think that would have been really good for her. Could have made things tough for Otto, and the expectation would be that Otto sides with Vaemond regardless, but then the king can intervene. Once Rhaenyra has given it her all but still failed, her father can be the hero. It's hard to prescribe additions to a scene that's already so good, though I can't help but feel that this would have been even more spectacular. But today is another day for Rhaenyra. She's winning battles if not the war, and war looms as they like to say. A loss can push your rivals to radicalize, become more devious, so this is stoking the flames of what's to come. The next episode I'm anticipating to be a wild one. I'm predicting one significant character's death besides Viscerys. Maybe that's too much considering our cast is quite small. The climax of this season is either next episode or the one after. Something has to turn on the flames. So let's talk about Alicent. I like how they've kept her anxiety present, even if hidden away. She's probably become better at managing it, but you can tell she's overwhelmed by her situation. She's had to take over leadership. She's in the king's chair at council, which is quite the burden. I like how her and Rhaenyra have similar experience in this regard. But it's not just the leadership that troubles Alicent, it's her children. Her children are the serious menace. Both boys have slid deep into the lifestyle we watched start up in the last episode. Aegon is a drunk, Aemond is a douche. Both children have a natural progression from their behavior in the last episode. Aemond seems particularly cold, but it's Aegon who really gets under Alicent's skin, and one of the things she said to Aegon was a bit shocking at first, denouncing him as her son. That was wild, but thinking about it a bit makes sense. So on one level, Aegon cheating means cheating on Alicent's daughter, so there's a deeper family issue there, but also this is directly contrary to those core values that Alicent is trying to hold on to, and so seeing her son breaking those, acting in the way she would view her enemies, makes her say that to him, probably more of a snap reaction than something genuine. But what I think we have set up on the side of the Greens is children being a downfall. I think that while Alicent may try to maintain this lifestyle, her two boys won't, and they're in positions of power and great opportunity, so we're likely to get a breakaway of motivations between where Alicent wants to take things and where her children are taking things. So even if peace is brokered between say Alicent and Rhaenyra, the kids I expect will force their hands into open conflict one way or another. Another interesting issue that causes tension between Alicent and Rhaenyra is the change of decorum, the visual shift in the Red Keep. They've swapped Targaryen symbols in with Hightower symbols, both religious and familial. Now this is a great touch to give to the Hightower takeover. By changing the visual profile of the Red Keep, the Hightowers are engaging in psychological warfare. They're creating a familiarity between their house and anyone who visits the castle being this critical structure whose ownership is aligned with ownership of the kingdoms. Typically when you own something you add your decorations, you make the theme of it suit your taste, and so by changing the banners and religious symbols, they're subliminally easing people into the idea that they are the house in charge. Rhaenyra and Daemon are wise to take issue with that. Cool details for sure. I enjoy this progression of Alicent's role. She's gone from a pawn to a queen. She's in the king's seat making the decisions. She's a great rival for Rhaenyra. I like the uncertainty around her mentality as well. I'm always asking myself if she's gonna switch up. This episode it was when she was interacting with the girl Aegon banged. I really thought she was gonna do something bad to her, and it seemed like she was considering it as well. I think there's uncertainty within Alicent as well. She has the urge to do bad and starts leaning into it for a moment, but then her ideals come in to stop her. It's great stuff, especially because this character trait comes into play on more plot significant issues. At the family dinner she says something very surprising, tells Rhaenyra she'll be a great queen, but she's digging herself into a hole. If Alicent helps supplant her now, she'll be the type of person she despises. She'll be a traitor, and she'll be betraying the king. Alright, now I'll talk briefly on some other characters. Daemon did very little in this episode, but what he did do was actually terrific. Him being at the king's side to help him to his throne was super heartwarming. I like the trio of Daemon, Rhaenyra, and Viscerys so much. Seeing them help one another in a moment of need is excellent. Daemon giving his brother the last push to enact his justice, and then Daemon decapitates Vaemond. That was terrific as well, defending his wife. It was very surprising. It tells us the type of role Daemon is taking, the provocative, in-your-face, aggressive guy who will have Rhaenyra's back, and is adding assets to their collective strength that Rhaenyra doesn't have alone. He also said 2 words to Vaemond, egging him on, and with 2 words seemingly triggered Vaemond to overextend and say the thing that got him killed. So Daemon subtly contributed in a very nice way, putting Rhaenyra in a much better position. The Velaryons are the root of most problems in this episode, as I predicted, and their succession is of primary importance. I like the way they convey their tremendous house pride, really enforcing the idea that they are a legendary house that has an importance rivaled only by the Targaryens. Vaemond was on screen for 5 minutes and is already better than Corlys. The balls it took to come out against the king like that was impressive. He's also totally in the right, so that makes it a really compelling performance. Another family is trying to put their non-Velaryon son on the throne of their house, which is essentially making the Targaryen dynasty the sole power in the realms, and breaking this long history of Targaryens ruling the skies and the Velaryons ruling the seas. So I totally buy into this arrangement causing him to explode like that. Vaemond is a Chand. There are other characters with way more screen time that hasn't had a moment this good. I'm looking at Otto Hightower. But with that said, it's time to give it a rating. This was a great episode. I do lean toward it being overall better than the last episode, and so I want to give it a 9. I do go back and forth on that score a bit because it is primarily one scene that makes it that good, but it was one that stands out in a way none other has. I think it was an extremely memorable moment and deserves a lot of credit. I'd be curious how others think this episode compares to the previous episode in particular, if they like this one more. But with that said, like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and I'll catch you later. Woski out.